Melatonin was discovered in 1958 by Dr. Lerner, a dermatologist. That's the year I graduated from the university, and during my early career as a graduate student, one of the fellow students gave a lecture on melatonin. It had just been discovered. I recall leaving the lecture and saying, that is a subject on which I will never work. 2 years later, while in the military, there was an emphasis on long-distance space travel because of the Sputnik that had been launched in 1957. Already the U.S. was thinking in 1964, when I was a captain in the medical service corps, that we will be going to Mars. And the Mars trip they knew would take 6 months. And they said they were visualizing a small 3-man capsule. They said, these astronauts are going to go stir crazy in that small capsule. So we have to get something to make them hibernate. So they charged 3 of us, researchers, with isolating the factor that caused hibernation, and that led us to melatonin. Not that melatonin is a hibernating factor, but it has something to do with hibernation. The U.S. space program and my military experience, 2 years in the medical service corps, led to my interest in melatonin. The most obvious thing here that it does is it's only produced in the pineal gland at night. In other words, all vertebrate species, fish, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals have a pineal gland, and it produces melatonin at night and is released into the circulation, and this provides a signal of time of day. It's a circadian rhythm regulator. But additionally, it's more than that. You have to recall that we evolved from species maintained under natural habitats where day length changes as a function of season. In other words, long day lengths in the summer, short day lengths in the winter, and that changes the duration of elevated melatonin at night. So melatonin is both a clock, providing circadian information, and it is a calendar. It supplies time of day information. And that's one of the first things we captured on seasonal reproduction in animals that is determined by light and dark, and of course, melatonin. It's widely used as a sleep-promoting agent, but it's not considered a soporific. It doesn't work like other sleep-promoting agents. Rather, it's a circadian rhythm effect. The way they describe the effects on sleep is it opens a normal sleep gate, allows for normal sleep to occur, which means for melatonin to promote sleep, it has to be taken at the right circadian time. We should have better sleep hygiene where we go to sleep the same time every night and take melatonin. But of course, people are confounded with weekends where things typically change in the evenings. Humans are living in a very artificial environment. Every individual I know, when it gets dark in the evening, doesn't immediately go to bed. They maintain under light until they do go to bed, which means they are delaying the onset of their melatonin rhythm. And that is truly abnormal in this situation. We were not designed to handle it. Light was never an option during our evolution at night. Blue light, blue wavelengths of light are the most inhibitory to melatonin production. But of course, most white lights that you have in your office or in your home contain blue wavelength. So it may appear white or yellowish, but there's a lot of blue wavelengths in there, and that inhibits your melatonin. So if you're going to avoid any light in the evening or at night, you should avoid blue light. Turning on a light at night is never a good idea because it sets your circadian clock, suppresses your melatonin, and you can actually experience a type of jet lag fatigue as a consequence. Light should be avoided after you go to bed at night until you get up in the morning. Your retinas have a specialized set of photoreceptors to regulate your circadian rhythm. In other words, if you turn on a light at night and inhibit your melatonin, it has nothing to do with your rods and cones. Rods and cones are for vision. You're seeing me, I'm seeing you, that's vision. But there's a separate set of photoreceptors, very small number of what are called intrinsically photoreceptor retinal ganglion cells, which the neurons project to the biological clock. The biological clock is right behind your eyes on the base of the brain. It's called suprachiasmatic nucleus, and light at night disturbs that biological clock and inhibits melatonin production. And then the clock is confused. The It's been told for 4 million years of evolution that light is day, dark is night. And now come humans, we misuse that light-dark environment badly. Initially, I was often asked, how about moonlight? I grew up in Minnesota where during the winter there was a lot of snow. On a bright moonlit night, reflecting off the snow, it was really very bright. It's not blue wavelengths of light. The bottom line is you can have light at night, but it should not contain a blue wavelengths. And this brings up something very important. For example, people with newborn infants awaken at night and people will get up and turn on the light. That really should be avoided. Also, if you nurse, you should do it at night in darkness or subdued light, but not blue light or white light, but subdued yellow light, red light, night lights, which a lot of people have and are not necessarily bad, but they are bad if they contain blue wavelengths or bright white. They should be some other color. Newborn infants have a pineal gland, and during pregnancy, the developing fetus receives melatonin signal from the mother, which passes through the placenta to the fetus, and it helps set the biological clock of the fetus. So if the pregnant woman has light at night, it's also giving misinformation to the fetus and the development of its biological clock. And we now know that has consequences. Those studies have not been done in humans, but we know in the animals that impacts development of circadian rhythms in newborns. Also, for the first 6 months roughly after birth, the newborn infant pineal gland does not produce melatonin. As a consequence, it gets melatonin from the nursing mother via the milk. The issue now is that many mothers no longer nurse, but they have artificial means, and those artificial substitutes do not contain melatonin. People should be much more attentive, particularly during pregnancy or during nursing periods, to their light-dark environment. All people should be more attentive, but especially those individuals. Within 10 years after the discovery of melatonin in 1968, Elvira Letpian, a scientist in Europe, described the inhibitory effects of melatonin on cancer cells. A very crude experiment because at the time there were not a lot of sophisticated methodologies, but that observation has been exploited in hundreds, thousands of publications since then. Melatonin is a reasonable agent to consider when it comes to cancer. Most cancers are age-related. As you age, your ability to produce melatonin wanes. Many diseases are age-related, and many seem to be related to the reduction of melatonin because if you substitute melatonin, it can delay, defer, forestall many of these conditions, including presumably cancer. I think people who routinely take melatonin for sleep, for example, don't realize that they are getting other benefits as well, likely as an anti-cancer agent and certainly as an antioxidant. It is very powerful antioxidant, much better, for example, than vitamin E or vitamin C. I'm not disparaging those antioxidants, but relative to melatonin, they are second class. It is well known that individuals who work night shift, for example, or do frequent transmeridian travel where they're in jet lag all the time, have an increased cancer risk. I'm 85 years old. I've been taking melatonin for 28 years, knock on wood. I'm in still very good health, but a lot of my colleagues who have worked on melatonin do the very same thing and are doing very well. I would say that's not a controlled study, but animal studies unequivocally show that deferring age-related diseases is possible with melatonin. Not only cancer, neurodegenerative diseases. We know that the cancer cell metabolism is different at night than during the day. It has a better positive metabolism at night that's directly related to the availability of melatonin. So cancer cells, in some regards, are more cancerous during the day than they are at night. And they are less cancerous at night because they are exposed to melatonin, which changes their metabolism, called the Warburg effect. In some cancer cases, it may be worthwhile to take melatonin during the day. And not only in cancer, but maybe in some severe septic conditions. We have treated newborn infants, neonates, with melatonin during the day to improve their septic response. Sepsis is a very deadly condition throughout the world in adults and children. So when you are severely ill, taking melatonin during the day and at night is not unreasonable.